On behalf of the motion picture industry, welcome to the world of home video entertainment.
The Passing is a independent film, a passion project of the director, actor John Huckert. It's an obscure film that I found out about a few years ago, just randomly browsing the shelves of a local video store here in Austin, Texas. I Love Video. I Love Video is one of the greatest video stores that I've ever been to. It exudes movies, the love of movies. The outside has these murals on it, and the inside is just, it's an incredible store full of all kinds of obscure films. There's lots of DVDs, a little bit of Blu-ray, and a sizable amount of VHS. And the VHS there, you will not see every movie ever made on VHS. But if you see a VHS tape there, because the place is so well curated, you'll know that it's a VHS that's there for a reason, that it's a movie that has never been shown on any other format, that it's not been released anywhere else. These oddities, these obscure VHS oddities, and there's many of them. You think of how many, like that obscure label Wave that made those like almost horror fetish tapes. Well, they have throughout the store, they have maybe about 24 of those Wave tapes. I mean, they have obscure stuff. Obscure, strange movies. And one of the movies that I saw was this VHS for this film called The Passing. And it was just this VHS, which was talking about John Huckert, and it looked like a self-released VHS, honestly. And I was looking at this and was like, what is this? And I never rented it. And then now Vinegar Syndrome has put out an incredible edition of it, with special edition, with commentary, with short films. An incredible film. So what is The Passing about? Because the VHS is very obscure. The back of the VHS tape, what it's about these two friends, these two old men, Ernie and Rose, old war buddies, now living in a house after Ernie's wife died. Now they're just living together and enjoying their final years together as friends and getting into hijinks. And there is a sci-fi element that gets involved, which involves the swapping of consciousness between a young person and an old person, and things get a little bit weird. I guess I don't want to spoil it as much, but it's an interesting concept, because the first part of the film is this, this wonderful little movie that's just a friendship between these two guys and hanging out together and talking about old times. And then it gets into sci-fi, and it gets into, there's a weird sci-fi sequence, very heady, strange stuff. The last little tiny piece is the sci-fi. Up until that point, it's just become this, this heartwarming family type of thing. So it's a weird movie. It's a different type of movie. The film started in the late 70s with this guy, John Huckert, working with mainly film students. He's based in Maryland. A lot of university students became the crew. And I don't think he went to the university, but they just became part of the crew. And he made this short film. And then he decided basically to expand this short film. The short film is basically a small version of the feature film, and then he expanded, and over the years he shot the parts and pieces of this longer version that became The Passing, and just added it to the original short film. And it's an interesting idea of just how do you take a short film and expand it with the original pieces. And he kept shooting, so because he started in 1975, 77, and then went up till 1983, 84, about like a 7-year time span. He kept shooting up until the time where the guy who played Ernie actually died. He passed away just before they were going to shoot some scenes. So right up until the point where one of the lead actors passed away, he was shooting scenes. And so he put it out as a short film, and then was working on the feature version. And then he showed a work in progress to John Waters, another Maryland-based filmmaker. And John Waters was a big proponent of the film, would show it. And John Waters said, you know, this movie would be interesting if you cut out the sci-fi element and just made a version of it that had, you know, Ernie and Rose is not a woman, by the way. It's his nickname after Wild Irish Rose. It's a, you know, thing. He liked the alcoholic imbibement. But Waters said, hey, the story of Ernie and Rose is so good. Why don't you cut a version that's just Ernie and Rose? And he made this second short film called Ernie and Rose, taking out the sci-fi element, because the original short film did have the sci-fi element. It's basically a short version of the film. He, to lengthen the film, he included this subplot with this guy who, you know, but anyway, so that's a version that won awards and that went out. The Blu-ray includes the original short film, The Passing, and then the third entity, Ernie and Rose. I hope I'm explaining this correctly, because there's so many different elements and things, and you know, to put it all together. And it's interesting to see the different versions because they're different quality. I think the original short film in Ernie and Rose, like the film quality, is much better than The Passing, because I think maybe they had better film elements of those short pieces. So, but it's interesting to see the differences in film and quality of picture between these different things. And it's a very, to me, illuminating and instructive process of different versions of the same piece, of the same story. So it's a very interesting type of thing where you can look at a story and see how much can you cut out, how much can you add, what does it take away and add from the storytelling. It's a very interesting kind of experimental type of a project that is felt like it seems like it was an ongoing project of Mr. Huckert over, you know, as I said, over a decade, almost a decade, 7 years, you know, from the late 70s into the 80s, kind of adding, removing elements, workshopping it. Interesting Blu-ray, a rarity. You know, again, this thing was locked in the VHS years. It had been released, you know, in gray market on DVD a few years ago, but this is just a beautiful looking. I mean, Vinegar Syndrome, again, they just do their usual excellent job of getting this kind of strange, odd movie out with all the requisite extras, commentary, an interview with a cinematographer on it who was a student who started working with this crew and made up of other students, and very interesting film, and something that you need to check out. If you love independent film, if you love real independent film, like people just going out with just nothing, no resources, going out telling their stories, telling an interesting story, this is that type of project. This is that type of thing. This is something you need to support. Vinegar Syndrome has done many of these kind of one-off type, almost student kind of based films. They did release another movie called Shot, which was a real interesting, like a student-based, like crime thriller film. That's another film that's worth checking out. The Passing is definitely worth checking out. It's an incredible film.